Finally! What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R for the third win of the season as the Kraken finally beat the Tampa Bay Lightning for the first time in Tampa Bay. Well, they beat them for the first time, period, but it comes in Tampa Bay in overtime 4-3. And it comes in a game for the Kraken that I would say, maybe outside of the home game against Carolina, is the first time that finally this season we saw pretty much a full 60 minutes of the Kraken team that we saw for the majority of last year this season. It was a team that had crisp passing, good transitions through the neutral zone, played well in their end of the ice, and generally just looked like a team that actually had a plan out on the ice. So what do you say we just go ahead and jump right into it, with the only changes in the lineup being Grubauer in net for Decord after Decord started the last three, and one switch with the lines, with Bjorkstrand jumping up to the Beniers line and switching with Eberle, who then went down to the Wennberg line. Now, at least right out of the gates here for the first couple of minutes of the game, the Kraken don't necessarily get off to a blazing start like we have seen them do here a couple of times in the last few games. On the other hand, they don't allow the Lightning to get off to that blazing start in the first couple of minutes either, which we have also seen the Kraken allow some opponents to get off to those hot starts in the first couple of minutes of games. Instead, this one is a pretty measured, well-played, even game for the first few minutes, and it isn't until an ill-advised pass, I think it was from Cirelli on the Kraken blue line. He just doesn't see Jaden Schwartz, who picks that pass off and turns it into a 2-on-0 rush, going back the other way. It's he and Eberle. And while I have been pounding the drum of, especially on 2-on-1 rushes, just shooting that puck first and hoping for a rebound or maybe you score, Schwartz again goes for that shot, and again, I like that idea on a 2-on-1 rush because you're not trying to force that pass through that lone defender, just potentially giving up a chance to shoot the puck at all. But when there's no defender, you've got a 2-on-0, passing it to the other guy you're coming in with does definitely increase the chances of scoring. I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit too nitpicky there. After all, Schwartz did take the wide open shot from the slot with nobody in front of him, and even if he had a wide open pass to Eberle on the other side, it's still a pretty good scoring chance here for the Kraken, and Schwartz is the one here with the hot stick. So it's hard to complain too much. Unfortunately, Johansson makes the great save here and then also keeps out the rebound opportunity. So the Kraken aren't able to score, but they are able to really turn this into some sustained momentum really throughout the rest of this first period. And thankfully, eventually that momentum does pay off for the Kraken as they get set up in the offensive end, not immediately after that 2-on-0 rush, but they do spend the vast majority of the remainder of this first period in Tampa Bay's end of the ice. And this time they're able to get set up, and I think it might have been actually on the next shift for that Schwartz and Eberle line, I guess Wennberg's line, but Schwartz and Eberle on it, that they're set up, circling the puck around the net. Eventually, it's Schwartz who has it. He passes it up to Schultz. Schultz fires off the shot. That is saved, but it rebounds out to the other side, where Brian Dumoulin has pinched down to the faceoff dot, and that rebound goes right to him with a wide open net. He isn't going to miss that, and Dumoulin gets his first as a Kraken and puts them on the board 1-0. So obviously at this point we're feeling pretty good as Kraken fans. The Kraken have all the momentum in the world. They just scored and they're out shooting the Lightning 10-0. Plus they're able to get right back into the offensive zone again. And then this is where things kind of come apart, as it starts with the fourth line. Yamamoto still on the ice, so kind of between a change, but Yamamoto with the puck skates up, takes a shot, that save is made. He collects the rebound, or at least tries to. McCann is the one that actually ends up getting the rebound. He gets it back to Yamamoto, though, who goes right up along the boards to the far side, and then makes a beautiful backhand pass through traffic from the boards out into the wide open slot that's been vacated completely by the Tampa defense. The one person there is Yanni Gourde, and Yanni Gourde buries it into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead. Which, I said things turned for the worse, because while a 2-0 lead is usually something you'd be excited about, it has kind of been the kiss of death for the Kraken here recently. And sure enough, 30 seconds later, the Lightning get into the Kraken end, desperate to get some sort of response and try to at least quell this Kraken momentum. And of all people, it's ex-Kraken Hayden Fleury who fires off the shot. Grubauer does make the save, but it rebounds right to a Lightning player next to the net. He takes a whack at it, and somehow this puck just rainbows right over Grubauer and into the top of the net to bring the Lightning right back to within one. And so just like that, suddenly that all too familiar feeling now at this point, at least over this road trip, is starting to creep back in, where a 2-goal lead for the Kraken is as good as gone as soon as they get it. They've had a 2-goal lead now in all 4 games of this road trip and a 2-0 lead in the last 3, including this one. But as soon as the Lightning get that first one, you just know that second one is coming at some point. And I'm not going to lie, when a minute later the Kraken end up getting a power play against a Tampa penalty kill that had not allowed a goal since the first game of the season, the thought did creep into my head that that second Tampa goal might just come as a shorthander on this Kraken power play. And sure enough, someone does end up scoring on this Kraken power play. Happily though, it's the Kraken. As about halfway through the Kraken power play, the Kraken are surprisingly able to get reset up in the offensive end after having been kicked out of it a couple of times by the Lightning penalty kill, and eventually that leads to an Ellie Tolvanen one-timer that doesn't find the back of the net, but it does rebound off of Johansson's pad out to Jaden Schwartz, who also isn't able to get another shot off. And honestly, I think this pass is what it turns out to be from Schwartz might have been an accident as he was trying to just whack the loose puck through Johansson. Instead, he ends up hitting it with the backhand out into the slot where, of course, Yamamoto has crashed into the play as well. It goes right to Yamamoto and he puts it right into the far top corner to give the Kraken the power play goal and the 3-1 lead. And not only that, but it's a 3-1 lead for the Kraken. Now, again, a 2-goal lead, so feeling a little iffy about that, but they are able to maintain it all the way into the first intermission, where by the time the first 20 minutes are up, the Kraken are out shooting the Lightning. I want to say it was 20-9. Of course, though, the bad news is that while we're feeling great about how that first period went, the Kraken still have 20 minutes to blow another multi-goal lead, and this is still a Lightning team that is good and very well coached. Sure enough, they come out into the second period looking to prove that they're not going to go away quietly, and quickly they end up with a power play as Alexiak gets called for a hold. And actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure this hold for Alexiak came against one of his old defensive partners in Hayden Fleury. I'm not sure how many times they played together on the same pair, but I'm sure it happened at some point in that inaugural season. Either way, Hayden Fleury now plays for the Lightning, and somehow Alexiak managed to have the rare D-to-D holding penalty that sends him to the box, the Kraken to the kill, and the Lightning a good chance to pull back to within 1. And sure enough, just over a minute through this Tampa power play, that's just what ends up happening, as once again I think it was Cirelli, but I'm not 100% on that. He ends up taking the shot right down Broadway through the slot that Grubauer is able to make the save on, but it rebounds out to the side, where a rebound chance is also saved by Grubauer. That bounces back out to the same side, where another shot comes on that does get through Grubauer. He's able to at least get a piece of it, though, so it doesn't go into the net, but it does go out to the far side, where another ex-Kraken player, though he played just a little tiny window of games. In fact, I think he only played 2 games for the Kraken, and Alex Barré-Boulet is standing, and Barré-Boulet gets that rebound off of Grubauer that goes through him and has a wide open net to shoot at. He doesn't miss. It's a power play goal, and the Lightning are back to within 1. Now, to Seattle's credit, they don't allow this power play goal for the Lightning to build into any momentum back at 5-on-5 for them. And in fact, Seattle plays the rest of this second period, again, pretty well. Clean passes, good transitions, creating offensive opportunities, and generally, I would say outplaying the Lightning the rest of the way through the second period. Unfortunately, they just aren't able to turn it into anything more on the scoreboard, even through another Kraken power play, and they do a good job of killing off a second Tampa power play in the back half of the second. But in the end, we do get to the second intermission, with the Kraken still massively outshooting the Lightning, but only leading 3-2. And then in the third, with that 1-goal lead, I still think the Kraken played a pretty good period here, but it did seem like they let off the gas a bit offensively in favor of playing kind of defense out and trying to prevent that third goal, the tying goal, from going in. Unfortunately, while they are able to play pretty solidly with that style and kind of turtle a bit in their defensive end, not fully to the point where they were spending the entire period in the defensive end, they were still getting some good passes and good transitions, but we're doing a lot of dumping it in to get changes rather than extending shifts to try to get offensive pressure. That does, although it works for the first 15 minutes of this period, eventually it comes back to bite the Kraken as the Lightning manage to tie up the game on another, in classic 2023-24 Kraken fashion. This tying goal late in the third for the Lightning comes off of another horrendously unlucky bounce for the Kraken. Not quite as bad as the one off of the boards that went against the Kraken for the third goal for Florida the previous game, but still a pretty bad bounces. Hagel's just circling around the net in the offensive end, and then just kind of throws the puck harmlessly towards the net. But of course, it ends up hitting Wennberg's skate right in front of Hagel and deflecting through the legs of another, I think again it was Cirelli. Cirelli just keeps showing up in this video at random points, but it goes through Cirelli's legs off of Wennberg's skate, and then right off of the inside of one of Grubauer's legs and into the back of the net to tie the game at 3. And of course, just like that, the story of the season continues as the Kraken lose another 2-goal lead that vanishes into the wind on another terribly unlucky bounce, as they just cannot seem to get anything to bounce their way. Eventually you'd think that something has to bounce their way, but it certainly hasn't happened to that point as that goal goes in. And of course, a couple minutes later, as the Lightning were pressing hard through these last few minutes to just end this game in a regulation, more chaos out in front of the Kraken net leads to a couple of rebounds, and eventually the puck just sliding out to the other side of the net away from Grubauer, where he has no chance to get back to make a save, and out in front of Tanner Jeannot, who's got a wide open net to just shovel the puck into backhand. He gets his backhand shot off, and it goes off the post and somehow stays out as Grubauer gets a glove on it. And oh, thank goodness, finally, the Kraken catch a break with this wide open net that would have given the Lightning the win, going off the post instead, and the Kraken escaping dodging a huge bullet here. So all right, you gotta call it like it is. That was a massive break for the Kraken, and I would say easily their luckiest bounce of this season so far, and at least as far as this game alone is concerned, does, I say, safely make up for that unlucky bounce that tied up the game at 3. Now, don't get me wrong, the Kraken are still very much in the red when it comes to luck at this point in the season, but this is a step in the right direction. And a little bit later, I wouldn't say it's luck because this is just a nice play by Alexiak, but Alexiak saves the Kraken once again on a wraparound chance, I think by Braden Point, forcing Point to put it off of, again, I think the post, at least the very edge of the side of the net. The Kraken do manage to survive the onslaught from the Lightning late here in the third and get this one to a third overtime in this 4-game road trip. Once we're in overtime, the Kraken go right back to doing their thing at 3-on-3. Somehow they win the opening faceoff, which, although winning faceoffs has been going a lot better for the Kraken this season than certainly it did last year, this game not so much. It was a much more last year type of game when it came to winning faceoffs. The Lightning winning 60% to just 40, obviously, then for the Kraken. Either way, they win this one, maintain possession through the first couple of minutes of this overtime. But while the Kraken are able to create some looks out of all this possession time, they aren't really able to create any great scoring opportunities and don't end up scoring. So eventually, Tampa ends up with the puck, and it does not take them long to get a 2-on-1 rush chance going back the other way towards the Kraken net. And of course, it's probably the 2 Lightning players you'd least like to see on a rush like this at any point in the game, but especially in overtime if you're the Kraken in this situation, because it's Point with the puck, and on the other side he's got Nikita Kucherov, and at the last second he gets that pass to the far side across Grubauer's face to Kucherov, who's waiting on the back door with his stick on the ice, and that will do it. The Kraken lose an OT. Wait, no? Somehow that puck goes off of the post and into Grubauer, who falls on it, and the Kraken once again dodge a massive bullet here. It goes off of the post on the glove side of Grubauer. He falls on it, and the Kraken are still somehow alive in this game. So again, to call it like it is, the Kraken now at this point, I would say, are very much in the black on the positive side of the luck in this game specifically. I would still make the argument that they're in the negative side on the season as a whole, but I would say this makes up certainly for what's happened earlier on in this game, and you could maybe even make the argument that this bounce can make up for that terrible one that caused the 3rd goal in Florida. And either way, it certainly does feel good now to have a couple of big bounces go the Kraken way that saved this game in both instances. Obviously, the one at the end of regulation would have made it pretty hard for the Kraken to get an equalizing goal there in the final minute and a half, and this one is sudden death if it goes in. And if there's anybody that knew the Kraken had gotten a couple of pretty fortunate bounces here, it was Philip Grubauer, who already had a pretty big grin on his face after the one at the end of regulation, and after this one, even with the big goalie mask on, you could tell he was smiling from ear to ear, knowing that, yeah, the big red posts that frame him had saved him on a couple of occasions. And then it isn't much longer after that the Kraken end up with a power play here in overtime, which means some 4-on-3, and in that 4-on-3, the Kraken gets set up in the offensive end, and then it's a beautiful passing play set up here by the Kraken. McCann with the puck on the right side of the offensive end, drops it to Bjorkstrand as he circles up to take Dunn's spot up by the point by the blue line. Bjorkstrand gets the pass over to Dunn, who's now in McCann's usual spot on the other faceoff circle. Dunn quickly up to McCann. McCann one-times it and finds the back of the net to give the Kraken the 4-3 win in overtime, his 5th of the season. The Kraken with 2 power play goals on the game and a massive, desperately needed win here to close out this road trip. So in the end then for the Kraken, this is a great end to a honestly great road trip, because even though the record still doesn't look great overall for the Kraken, largely because of the horrendous start to the season and that first road trip, plus the 2 not very good games at home on either side of the Carolina win, this road trip went very well for the team, a 2-1-1 record, so they pick up 5 points in 4 games, and well, sure, there's some frustration built in there as they did blow 2-goal leads in all 4 games. They still pick up those 5 points against good teams on the road. I mean, sure, Detroit we didn't necessarily think was going to be as good as they have been coming into the season, but when the Kraken beat Detroit, they handed them their first loss in 6 games at that point. I mean, they had already lost a couple of games, but they were on a 5-game winning streak when the Kraken went into Detroit, came away with a win there, even if they had to do it in overtime after blowing a lead. Then they go to Carolina, again, blow a lead, but still come away with a point against a good team. Florida, yeah, we know what happened there. But then, of course, they come back to this game in Tampa and finally beat the Lightning for the first time in franchise history. And again, get this desperately needed win. To add to that, at least for me anyway, it's not just that the Kraken won this game, though obviously that was the important part with the Kraken again, desperately needing some wins. It's also how they won this game that has me feeling so good about it coming out of this win. Because to be perfectly honest, I feel pretty confident in saying this, even with the Kraken record still the way it is and them needing to make up ground, that if they play the way they did in this game for the majority of the rest of the season, they will have no trouble making the playoffs come season's end. And I know that's probably going to come off as sounding like a very homer take, given where the Kraken are still at in the standings, even after this win. And I can't really blame you for thinking that, but this was a complete game, really full 60 minutes, and the Kraken played like they did at their best last season, and they had 100 points at the end of last year. Really, then the question more is whether or not the Kraken can consistently play this well for the majority of the rest of the year, but they did it for the majority of last season, so at least we know it's in them, even if I would say that this was by far the best game they've played, at least from a full 60-minute perspective so far this season. I do feel like they played a pretty full 60-minute game in this one, even if they got outscored 1-0 in both the second and third periods. They were certainly the better team in the second period. In the third period, I think had it been more of an even game and they didn't have a lead, they would have been a little bit more present in the offensive end. And yeah, the last few minutes, they did seem a little bit panicky, so they certainly could have cleaned things up there for the last kind of 2.5, 3 minutes of the game. But in some ways that almost feels like nitpicking, especially considering the Kraken put up a second best in franchise history 43 shots on goal in this game. Again, like I've said a couple of times, against a very good Lightning team. With all that having been said, I feel like I've kind of been rambling a bit, but what can I say? I'm excited after this win. We can get to the 3 stars. Again, a reminder, if you want to be part of choosing the 3 stars, and this is a game where there were a lot of people to choose from, you can help support this channel a little bit more than you already are by watching this video to this point, or even using some of those free buttons down below by using the link to Patreon down below and helping support financially there. With the 3 stars, the first one I think is a pretty clear one. He was the official first star of the game. It's Kailer Yamamoto, who had a fantastic game. He was buzzing around the ice all night, was very good when he was out there with the fourth line, good on the power play. Obviously, he scored the first power play goal for the Kraken, but also showed up in a couple of other areas, either whether it was on the end of a long shift, or I don't know if he was put out there for a couple of extra shifts because of how well he was playing. But obviously, he also got that very nice assist on the Gord goal before he even scored on the power play. So in general, a great night from Yamamoto. Then with the second star, this is where there are a lot of options, and I've only got 2 more choices. And there's guys like Schwartz and Schultz, who I both feel like were very deserving. Dumoulin had his first goal as a Kraken. McCann scored the overtime winner. In the end, I'm going to end up going with Yanni Gord, though, who does get that goal from the nice pass. And, well, if it had been any other team, I might have leaned more towards a Schwartz, for example. But for Gord, it is scoring his first goal back in the place he called home when he won back-to-back cups with that team. So an extra special goal, I would imagine, for him. And then for the third star, I do have a bit of a tandem third star here between two, so I'm going to cheat a little bit, but you'll see why here in a second. The first of the two that I'm going with here is Philip Grubauer, who did stop 34 of 37 shots, so a great night from him. And of course, helping him out here and having the second half of this third star, I have the plumbing. Yes, we're going with the post, specifically the post on the glove side of Grubauer, and although the two big ones came at either end of the ice, so it was actually both nets that helped him out, it was the post on the same side of him in both occasions, and in both occasions saved this game for the Kraken and turned, in one case, what could have been 0 points for them in the standings to eventually they end up getting 2, and then of course saving them in overtime, which helps them get that extra point. So yeah, a great night not only from Grubauer coming in after being on the bench for a few games, but also from the plumbing. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you think I'm totally out of my mind? Who your Kraken 3 stars would be? You might not be that far off if you do think that, but who your Kraken 3 stars would be, what you thought of this game in general. And yeah, going forward, let's hope that they can keep this momentum going into this homestand and heck, maybe even win some games in regulation for a change. Or maybe hold a multi-goal lead. There's still some improvements that could be made. But anyway, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video and want to see more, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel for free, so I'd appreciate using them. Again, if you want to help support a little bit more, there's a Patreon link down there as well that can get you all sorts of other perks. And until next time, back at home against Nashville, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!